Hello everyone, my name's John Beach, and I want to talk to you a little bit today about a video which came to my attention yesterday on Twitter, which is a video shot on handheld cameras in May 1995 in Cricket St Thomas, and basically it's a tour of the abandoned Mr Blobby theme park in Somerset. This is an actual video of when taken by these two nameless guys wandering around the theme park back in May 1995, when it was still legit. It still had hope. It was still kind of like gonna be the next big thing, you know, in terms of theme parks. It was gonna rival Chessington and Alton Towers and all that shit, and really kind of boost Mr Blobby's profile in the media. For those who don't know who Mr Blobby is, he's a big foam clown / alien figure with a bow tie who I was always pretty terrified of. He didn't really invade my consciousness in the same way that maybe like a Pennywise the Clown did, or Chucky from Child's Play did, or Michael Myers from Halloween did, or Ronald McDonald did. These kind of awful ghoulish masked clownish figures. He was kind of like, I was still pretty scared of him. He was chaotic. He had a horrible voice. He was fat and clumsy and generally pretty creepy. Like, I wouldn't have ever really wanted. I wouldn't even now like to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and see him at the bottom of my bed, for example. He still freaks me out. And I think most people agree that Mr Blobby is freaky as fuck. He's not terrifying, but you know, he's pretty scary. He's not something you'd want to bump into down a dark alley, is he? Bumbling around and doing all his nonsense. So but what happened was, Mr Blobby had a period, and Noel Edmonds' House Party had a big period of popularity back in the 90s when I was a little boy. And Mr Blobby actually got to #1 in the singles charts with a song, and you know, I don't know if you remember, it was like Mr Blobby, oh Mr Blobby, you never know what he's gonna bump into next, Mr Blobby. It went like that, and it was #1 in the charts for quite a long time, and Mr Blobby then went pretty popular, pretty big. So this video this theme park must have been off the back of that success. You know, Noel's House Party was #1 in the ratings. Mr Blobby's #1 in the charts. Everyone knows who he is. So let's, you know, then do the next big thing and kind of capitalize on it, and let's build a Mr Blobby theme park, right? Which has since been abandoned and graffitied, and it's like a house full, like people are just like descending on it, sleeping on it, graffitiing on it, doing drugs in it, smashing all the shit up. But this video that I'm about to show you now is back in the day when it was still a thing. It still had hope. It was still there. It wasn't very popular, but it was there. Do you know what I mean? And Matt Johnson sent me a video yesterday when I was at work, which was like a 1-minute clip of this, which appeared on Twitter. And I thought it was the most terrifying thing I've seen in a long time. And anyone who knows me knows that I like horror, and I've watched some pretty fucked up shit on the internet quite a lot. Well, most big internet reaction horrible videos I've seen. And this, for me, like if someone was to say, John, you know, what is your definition of horror? You've seen all this horrible shit. You've played all these horrible games. You've seen lots of horrible internet videos of people being sick on each other and stuff, and getting decapitated with chainsaws. What's your definition of horror, though? What really kind of freaks you out? And there's a section in this video that I'm about to show you, which is, for me, the definition of horror. If you take, for example, maybe like something like Eraserhead, like that kind of feverish, dreamy, nothing makes sense, I'm ill in bed kind of feeling, that might be what hell is like. You know, that for me, that's what real horror is. That tumbling, surreal awfulness. But this video in particular, one segment in particular, which we'll take you through. We'll do a little bit of an intro, and then we'll go to the part that I think is so horrifying and kind of explain why, and then we'll try and work it out together why this is so fucking horrible. So let's without further ado, let's crack on with the vid. So this is the kind of a few kind of establishing shots from these guys who've made this documentary. of the post office, the Mr Blobby post office. Let's just start off. So you can see there, Crinkly Bottom newsagent, a Crinkly Bottom post office. Crinkly Bottom is where Mr Blobby and Noel Edmonds used to live together. So this section here is where you can hear some of the sound that's going to play such a large part of what makes this video so horrible a bit later on, coming in to the kind of oral space. You can hear a crackly kind of lo-fi carnival kind of music playing on the background in this strange area which doesn't seem to have anyone around. There's no one there. And I don't know whether they were let in themselves just to look around it, or whether it was even open to the public. Look at these empty seats and umbrellas. This is a place where kids and families and everybody should be sitting, eating for lunch. You know, getting some Mr Blobby chips and Blobby burgers and Noel sandwiches or whatever. But there's no one here. There's nobody here. Not a soul has come to Blobbyland at Crinkly Bottom theme park in Cricket St Thomas in May 1995. On this otherwise beautiful spring afternoon. So after another establishing shot, we move into this Animals of Farthing Wood section, which is largely boring. It's the two guys going around taking videos of the it says we're 1 minute into this video, don't worry, it's not going to go on that long. But they're shooting kind of like the animatronic plastic otters and little froggies and that, which are sort of planted around. That's a beaver, I think. A beaver? Otter? I don't know, a penguin? Maybe? What is that? So these animals kind of perched in amongst the foliage, the stinging nettles. You know, stinging nettles are a horrible plant, and these kind of very happy creatures. There's an incongruousness that we're starting to see coming out here. Foxes look a bit weird, you know, they don't look like they've been crafted very well. And a big fat owl with a six-pack up on a branch. So you're starting to see a little bit of the things that don't make sense. A massive badger, you know, which is out of scale from everything else. Starting to see a little bit of the weirdness that's going to come out. A massive seagull there as well. I think that's a seagull, yeah. These things just all there in the silence. There's nothing else but the birds singing. What should have children laughing and crying and frolicking around, trying to stroke these plastic creatures and play with them and stuff. There's no one. They're just sitting there in the forest on their own. This is the Crinkly Bottom High Street. So this is when we start to get a little bit more creepy. The creepiness kind of escalates a little bit. What we're looking at here is animatronic figures in shop windows, which don't look, they're not very good. As you can see, like their movement here, it's a bit low budget. Look at the way it's going up further than it did last time. It doesn't have a regular motion, does it? It's a bit feverish. Something quite creepy about the way it moves, in the way that it's not regular. It doesn't feel like it's been worked out properly. So this is the high street where we see a garage. These two guys going around pressing the buttons on each of the shop windows to activate the displays, which last for about 5 seconds. And another, a carpenter or something there doing some carpentry work. But you can see that the hammer's not... It's kind of like that. What should be like that. It's sort of going... I'm irregular movements. And it's kind of freaky. Listen to the silence of the afternoon in May 95 at the Crinkly Bottom Mr Blobbyland theme park. The only thing you can hear is the birds tweeting and singing. The natural world very much away from this kind of man-made freak, kind of freaky animatronic hell of Blobbyland. The birds are singing unaware of the surreal, horrible shit that the humans below have made. So this is a bit feverish as well. This is when we start to see things that aren't going to make sense, which we'll go into when we get to the real horror, the Blair Witch ending, the Exorcist scene of this video, which we move on to in a few minutes' time. But here we can see the surrealness, the surrealism of the crinkly bottom theme park Mr Blobbyland coming through. It says "kiss me" and there's a picture of like a butcher with a duck shouting something at the top. It doesn't look thought through, does it? Like, what's that trying to say? That sign there, why kiss me? I don't know. I can't really see that character. It looks like a monkey in like a butcher's outfit or a baker's outfit. I wouldn't want to kiss that. Do you know what I mean? Why is it telling you to do that? This isn't a. It doesn't feel like this kind of place for a message like that. And there in the same shot where it says "kiss me," there's a kind of orc-like minion folding clothes in some awful clothes shop. He's dressed up nicely for the occasion as well there with his bow tie and waistcoat. Why? You know, why? So something appearing from behind curtains is something that we'll go on to explain a little bit later on when we come to the real horror of Mr Blobby's house in which he lives. The Blobby shop, again, should be filled with customers looking to get Mr Blobby merchandise at probably slightly inflated but otherwise competitive prices. Dolls, paintings, posters, t-shirts, pencil cases, you know. It should be filled with people, but instead there's no one here. There's no one around. If anything was to happen here at the Crinkly Bottom Mr Blobbyland theme park, there's not going to be too many people around to save you. Listen to the birds tweeting. This is outside, but now when we go inside, we kind of get a different, a really different vibe starts to kind of creep its way into our conscious here as we enter the Mr Blobby house. And I think this is one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. Not terrifying as in, oh my god, oh, I'm so scared, but certainly one of the creepiest things that I've seen, and something that I can't stop imagining and thinking about since I watched it. This is Dumb Blobbin, and this is where Mr Blobby might have been living in the world of the Mr Blobby theme park. It has since been overtaken by vandals and squatters. So you can hear this kind of carnivalesque soundtrack playing in silence. You know, there's no one around here to enjoy this. And our camera kind of creepily, slowly makes its way to the front door of the Mr Blobby house, where we're going to start to see some very, very freaky shit indeed. I'm pausing for a second to zoom in on some ducks which have been placed in the thistles and brambles. They haven't. It feels overgrown and neglected, even now. So now we're going to enter the Mr Blobby house, which is where some pretty freaky shit happens. This really is quite horrible. We'll kind of discuss the things that happen, the things that we see as we see them. Listen to the music. Listen to that. The awful sound. Let's just wind that back. Listen to the sound effects. This is not somewhere where you would want to be at all, obviously. It sounds, even through the grainy VHS microphone used on this camera that these two guys are using, it sounds loud. It sounds too loud for something which should be pleasant and for children by and large. This horrible shrieking, this tumbling carnivalesque music. It doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense here. And it will grow to become even more nonsensical as we move through, and even more horrifying. So what are we looking at here? Our first room, we've got a fish swimming around in a tank. It's a fat fish. I think it's got Mr Blobby theme markings on it. There's what looks like a bed or a couch in the same room as a TV, which is playing some indescribable staticky black and white footage of Mr Blobby, which isn't a nice thing to be looking at, is it? We've got a record player moving on its own, obviously the source of the awful carnivalesque music, and a dog lies there kind of in the middle of this kind of ghoulish scene with this horrible chintzy living room sofa that they've obviously just picked up from like DHS or somewhere, which doesn't feel... It's the domestic mixed with the demonic here. We have horrible puppets. Look at this puppet. It just looks shit, doesn't it? Which gives it a creepy vibe, you know. The old ventriloquist dummies of old, they were terrifying because they looked shit. The really crappy looking ones are the scariest. Look at that. One arm sort of dangles by its side. Pictures of Mr Blobby there on the wall. Awful demonic ghoulish smiles. I think this is a kitchen area. Again, things moving on their own as they normally do in these kind of dark ride experiences, but kind of in a very jerky, haphazard kind of way. That might be like a mixer that kind of is stopping and starting. There's a piece of cake on the floor there that nobody's eating. Again, we have this noise. Thumping, this carnival music thumping its way through the experience. So this is when we start to get really creepy. This is the curtains area. I think this is a shower or a bathroom. Look at this. Now that doesn't even look at that. I mean, look at that. That doesn't even look like Mr Blobby. Look at that dirty towel. Shower curtain. I can't see what that looks like. An upside down cross on it here. That is not something that anyone should see. Like, if you took that still and put it as like a fucking cover for some like electro doom band with 12-minute songs, it would probably fit. It would probably fit as a kind of, yeah, like a poster or still from some awful horror film. But again, it's really surreal. Like, why is he sideways? Why is he looking at me in the shower? Why is this happening? Why is it so dirty looking? Again, this is meant to be somewhere for kids to go and enjoy. This is meant to be somewhere happy, somewhere to escape. This isn't somewhere to escape. This is somewhere to this is hell on earth. So mixed with these kind of dirty curtains and just general feverishness, these horrible pictures on the wall. I've had dreams like this about happy looking paintings and really nightmarish scenes. That baby squealing really miserably in the background there, and the scratchiness of the audio in conjunction with what we're seeing, these happy smiling crassly painted pictures of a faded children's mascot. That looks like a spade, but it could also be a champagne glass. Really, really creepy pictures. You know, if you woke up and you woke up and went into your lounge and these pictures were up, you wouldn't be happy. These are freaky, hand-drawn paintings that are just freaky by their nature. These two guys in this Mr Blobby house alone. There's no one here looking at this. When they left this building, this shit was still there, still happening on its own, independent of whether people were looking at it or not. It was still there, and it might still be there today if people hadn't gone in and destroyed it. The bed scene is truly awful, truly horrifying. We've got what looks like a Mr Blobby in bed here, but not in bed happily. He's kind of slumped in bed, and it doesn't even seem fat enough to be Mr Blobby. So I don't know what this is in bed here, but it's a kind of nightmarish bed. It's a sort of bed that you wouldn't want to be ill in, ever. You wouldn't want to be ill in a bed like that on a hot May day. But the character in here looks ill. Like they've got flu, you know, and that kind of ties into the whole feverishness of this. I've just worked that out. That's pretty fucked up. Try and take a close look at the clock here. The clock is spinning round and round and round and round and round. This is not a place that exists in any semblance of time. This is hell. This is the next dimension. This is the next dimension of consciousness, and this is what might wake us all. If we're not good people. You never know, imagine that. The clock spinning says everything. This is beyond time and space. This has no logic, no control, just pure feverish hell. Listen to the baby screaming. Look at this utterly horrifying animatronic doll in a crib, rocking around, looking miserable. They've all got sad faces. They know they're in this hell. They know they're in this surrealist bubble of feverish nightmare, and they want to get out as well, but they can't. Look at the figure slumped in the bed. What's back there? What's back there? Who made this? Why? And that is basically the end of it. I haven't actually watched this, but I think basically what happens now is they go around a little bit more, and then there's like a live showing, and like Mr Blobby comes out. That's Mr Blobby, and then kind of like the video ends, I think, with a big party, and like Mr Blobby does some shit and whatever. But so that's all the really feverish shit. But anyway, that is the most fucked up thing I've ever seen. It will always have a place in my mind. When Matt Johnson showed it to me yesterday, I knew I had to talk about it, otherwise I'd just go insane. I hope you've enjoyed it. Fucking hell. Really terrifying scenes at the abandoned Crinkly Bottom theme park. I'm sure you'll agree. Don't have nightmares, sleep well, and thanks for watching.